Well, I'm Laurie Boughton, and my husband Randy and I have three adopted children. Joshua's 9, Zoe is 6, just turned 6, and Caleb is 3. Randy, my husband, also has a daughter, Elizabeth, who is adult, and she's married. I don't have any natural children of my own. Randy and I were pregnant early on in our marriage, and I miscarried. So we weren't able to have children after that, but adoption was always part of our plan. Always, it wasn't a plan B, it was both. And so we just decided to, after a year of processing the loss of our first child, that we would pursue the adoption. And China being the country that we chose was because we both had a heart for orphans. We pursued that option and we're expecting a girl. And our first was not a girl, obviously, Joshua. But we did accept him as our first child from China, as our first adopted child. And it was during that time of adoption and just stirring in my heart about what God had called me to and why He had called me or called us. But it was really my heart just being stirred about these young girls that would be placed in an orphanage, and if they weren't adopted out, that they would be aged out at around the age of 14, and some girls not even making it to the orphanage, but into the streets and into harm's way of human trafficking. And that's just always been a horror for me to think about that. So that was another purpose behind our wanting to adopt, especially an Asian girl. So our next adoption was Zoe, and little Zoe, she comes from a province that is well known for trafficking, and they actually do kidnap some of the girls who are working in the nearby fields of the rural area. So we felt very fortunate to be bringing her out of that and into a home that where this wouldn't happen to her. It was during this time back in 2000, about 2011, 2012, that the church we were attending, the pastor, well, he had his laptop stolen. Okay, so he was a victim of crime, and it really upset him. And he was very surprised at his reaction, and he just he brought it to the Lord, and he said, "Lord, I don't understand this." He said, I really want this man brought to justice." So he turned that into a sermon message, and out of that sermon message, I heard, to me, it was a call to rise up, to not allow this victimization to be, and that call spoke to my heart about the trafficking issue again. And you have to say something. The Lord's placed this on your heart, and it gave me the courage to do it. I heard the Lord very clearly, now's the time. You need to share this. You need to get this out. And I was petrified because I felt like if I shared that with someone, it would make it happen. I would be real. I would be out in this, and I would be, I would be trying to do something about it, and I was scared. I was scared that the enemy would come and sift me, just really come after me. And I'm a prayer warrior, so that kind of confused me. I was like, this shouldn't be scaring me, but it did. It did. It scared me on a very deep level. But hearing his message and God clearly speaking to me about that, I said, I need to talk to the pastor. I need to tell him your message. It awakened something in my heart, and I need to share it with you. And I've never shared it before, and I hadn't, except with my husband. So I met with him, and he heard it, and he said, well, it sounds to me like you're being called out. Are you ready for this? And I said, I think so. And he said, well, where do you see yourself going? Now remember, this was back now 2012, 2011, something like that. And I looked at him and I said, well, I think it's Thailand. And I said, I just don't know why, but I just think it's Thailand. Even though I have Chinese children, I think it's Thailand. So, knowing something about trafficking and where it's pretty prevalent. For quite a while, I'd forgotten about that. And it was the call from Pastor Bobby sitting us down after service, October of 2013, and telling us about this orphanage home in Thailand. And I didn't make the connection at the time about my sharing with the pastor back in 2011, and then Pastor Bobby saying, I have a mission. I have a couple in Thailand that need help, and they work with orphans. They work with Hill Tribe people and refugees. So I said, okay. Brandy and I talked to him, and we agreed to go. And it was half a year into the surrendering to it and saying yes, that I realized that I'd had this conversation with my former pastor about going to Thailand to work with victims or potentially victims of trafficking. I couldn't believe that this was actually coming together, and that God had so beautifully orchestrated it. And I wasn't scared. I wasn't hesitant. I just said yes. Now, that was the easy yes. The more difficult piece of this, the more difficult surrendering of this, if you will, is actually going through the process. And when Pastor Bobby sat us down and he said, now, here's what you're going to need to do, I hadn't thought about all the cost that it was going to be. Giving up my home, selling possessions, or giving most of them away, because I just, it's hard to do that too, but just giving most of the things away, finding people that we could leave a piece of our lives with. That was the first probably big realization and hurdle. And then realizing that we would have to raise support, and going to ask people for, help us to go to Thailand to help orphans and help keep them safe and keep them from trafficking. That was a humbling experience as well, because we'd always been the givers. We'd always been the ones doing that. People come to us, yes, we'll give to this kind of thing. And now we're on the other side of this, and it was just difficult. That was another surrendering and allowing God to minister to us through others by receiving. The greatest surrender that I have in my heart right now is, will people forget us once we're there? And the second one, probably more poignant on my heart, is my children, especially little Joshua. Just that he has such a tender, sweet heart, and he is surrendering too. And it's a beautiful process to see it in your children, and that, I have to be strong, and I can't fall apart in the surrender process, because he's doing it in such a precious and beautiful way, by being just living life fully, just being able to just roll with it and to flow with what we're asking him to do. Now I know he's hurting. There's things that are bothering him. He doesn't show that very much, and I don't think he understands all of it. Watching his surrender, it gives me just a new appreciation of God's his goodness and his faithfulness, and that he's sovereign, that he's not changing, even though there's many unknowns to where we're going and what we're going to be doing, how it's going to work out. But there are knowns, and I kind of see Joshua living in that, living in the sovereignty of God, and I want to choose to do that too. I want to choose to live in that sovereignty as I continue to surrender, and as I watch him and as I watch the rest of our family do that.